This is Rebecca.
And this is Brandon.
And we are a couple of theater nerds
who enjoy movies and enjoy talking about movies.
And then we enjoy disagreeing about them as well.
Almost. We almost got to it.
Yeah, I always forget right there. I think now it's cemented in.
It is.
That's
what it is now.
I'm never going to remember
You all are just going to have to be okay with that. All right? So, don't get off of the fan forums going, they say it wrong.
Yeah.
You just gonna have to put up with it, all right?
Oh, yeah, our subreddit.
That's right. So join us as we discuss the movies we have just seen. This is the Drive Home Reviews podcast.
So the movie that we are going to be talking about today is the sixth in its
series, franchise,
its line, and itself. It talks about the whole phenomenon of sequels, prequels, requels, and how the rules for franchises have changed in the last few years.
It's interesting to me just about this franchise in particular is it's one of those ones that I'm trying to remember the exact history of Scream. I don't know if they ever really intended it to go this far. Like, I have a feeling they had a sequel in mind because most things got a sequel back in the 90s.
True.
But then it seems to me like part 3 snuck up on them a bit.
Part 4 is the one no one remembers.
Nope. Part 4 is the Rocky V of the Scream franchise. It exists. Everyone knows it exists, but good luck finding anybody who has seen it or remembers it. I saw it once, and it says I have been meaning. This is off topic. This is something that maybe we should do. One of the things I was planning to do at one point for Halloween was to go back and do a rewatch of all the Scream movies and review them each and kind of talk about the succession. That might be something we might think of. What do you think, fans? Like, let us know.
Yes, please flood our inbox with all 4 of yours.
Hey, I will take the song from title of show. I would rather be 5 people's favorite thing than 100 people's 5th favorite thing.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so got off on a tangent there.
Yes, you did. But like you said, yes, Scream 4 might be the least watched of them. But although it was the last one directed by Wes Craven.
It was, yeah.
And it was written by Kevin Williamson, who was
the writer of the first 2.
Yeah. He didn't write the third one.
I think that's why the third one always feels very disjointed from the other 2, from the first 2, is that because it didn't have his...
It was a different writer.
And you all younger listeners probably wouldn't remember that name, but Kevin Williamson was a pretty influential name at that time. He not only did this, I believe he wrote...
he created Dawson's Creek.
He created Dawson's Creek, but he also wrote, I think, I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I would have to check on that.
I'm pretty sure he did.
I know he did the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah.
And The Following, which was a really good show for one season.
Yeah.
It was on for 3, but it was a really good show for one season.
But
yes, he did do I Know What You Did Last
Summer. So he was a pretty not quite Joss Whedon levels of big.
I would say let's jump on the Kevin Williamson train as long as he hasn't done, like, I hope that it's not going to come out that he's done terrible things.
But in terms of kind of reinvigorating the horror genre, like he kind of pioneered along, not just kind of the Scream films, but he kind of pioneered that very 90s aesthetic and that very 90s feel of TV shows and movies that were very aware and a little bit meta. And that kind of quote unquote irony of, I remember like the first season of Dawson's Creek, the season finale, and they were, whining about, I hate season finale cliffhangers. They're so stupid and tired and cliche, and then they go and end it on a cliffhanger.
Right.
So and that was very much the language of the
Well,
90s.
I think it has a very much it's teenagers and well, okay, it's adults pretending to be teenagers. We all know. What James Vanderbeek was mid-20s when he started playing a 15-year-old kid. But it's teenagers who are treated more as adults,
Yeah.
who have deep conversations and deep thoughts as opposed to DJ Tanner.
Yeah, and I remember, and you can look back on it now and say whatever you want, but I remember watching like the first season of Dawson's Creek, and really, I was kind of in my late teens when
Right.
that show came on and when Scream came out, and these people talked closer to how me and my friends talked. My friends
Right.
being a bunch of nerds and film geeks and things like that. And like you say, it was one of the first times I felt like a show or something was actually. I don't want to use the tired cliche of tuned into my generation, but I didn't feel talked down to.
Right. It didn't feel like you were gonna learn a life lesson by the end of the show.
Yeah,
I loved Joshua Jackson's character Pacey Witter
hmm
on Dawson's Creek there. And I think that that was something that really translated over into the Scream movies. Um with the exception of the Scream movies now, is there something comparable to that? Are there the teen slasher flicks now? Is there like the teen shows? What are kids watching
I
now that
don't
is like
know,
that?
and I think and this is one of the things where I think it'd be interesting to go back and watch the entire series and talk about it. Um, and I know that some people would probably say that Scream was a little bit more detrimental to the horror genre because now every horror genre is very self-aware, or at least they were for a while.
Right.
Were the very kind of, oh, this is so stupid. Oh, I'm the black guy. I don't want to get killed. And
Yeah.
that very very heavy winking at the audience so much that you give yourself a seizure from the strobing.
Right.
So you can debate whether it was good, it was for good or ill, but I don't know what the kids are watching.
I think that these kind of things, like the teen shows and like the horror movie franchises like that, I think that they go in waves. They ebb and flow. So they're gonna get super cheesy, and then they're gonna get super serious again, and then they'll go back to super cheesy. And then you'll have a total fork thrown into the middle of it, like Jordan Peele's
Yeah.
social horror. So I think about we've talked about this with the superhero genre. You had the super cheesy 80s and 90s superhero movies, and then you get the really dark with like Batman Begins and that era, and then they came back to like kind of light and popcorny fluffy
Except for
with
DC.
except for DC, who's still trying to DC is that parent who's still wearing the same clothes they had in high
But you
school in the
can't see, you
90s.
can't really blame DC for that. In a way, you can, but they're still trying to appeal to those. I've noticed that DC fans of both the comics and the movies are the ones that are so desperately trying to convince themselves that this hobby is so serious. It's so serious. Reading Superman is serious. And it's like, look, I'm a comic book fan. I love comic books, but they're comic books. It's not to say they can't say something important or that they can have social meaning.
Yeah, but it's not Dostoevsky.
Yeah, it's a fucking comic book. It's you strip it down. It's still people in wacky costumes, fighting evil. Okay, I mean you and again, we're linking back. I think that's something that definitely the original Scream hit on. It hit the perfect balance between the cheesy and the serious.
Right, because it it was cheesy, but it wasn't like a movie that you'd watch on Riff Tracks or
Yeah,
Mystery Science Theater. It still had serious scary moments. It still had jump scares. It still had, it was really making a statement about something,
Yeah,
but it did have
and
those
it
meta
yeah,
moments.
it really, and I think where some of its copycats and maybe even some of its own series went off the rails a little bit is tuning in too much to the meta ness of it
Right.
and not really striking that balance. Now, here's a question: did you know that on MTV they actually had a Scream television series?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's completely separated from the continuity of the movies, so
Okay.
it's a completely different story. I've never seen the third season, but I can tell you the first and second seasons are pretty good.
Kind of like American Horror Story, where it's like it's its own kind of anthology series.
Almost, no, the first and second season are connected.
Okay,
And then the third season is a completely different
I
cast.
see.
But I've never seen the third season. I don't know if the third season ever even aired. I know there was a cast list, but I never saw any listings for it. But
Well,
the show itself, the first two seasons were actually pretty good.
I will tell you that I was not allowed to watch MTV. Plus, I lived in Canada, so I'd be more
Well,
likely to
this
watch
was in the last couple years. This
much
was
music. Oh, okay. I thought you meant when I was like during the teen years, because
no,
like,
no. This was a couple years back, maybe 2000 the 2000 teens, I think, is
yeah.
when it was done. So
So this franchise in specific started in 1996, so it's been going almost 30 years
yeah.
now. So, are there like what other franchises can you think of that have been going that long? I don't even think the Fast and the Furious have been going that long.
No, the Fast and the Furious. Well, you got to go way back. You got to go to like. It depends on what you're talking about. Like, because the Bond series has been going since the
Right, but
'60s.
that's almost like saying Doctor Who has been on the air for 50 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Like technically, yes, but each season has like 7 episodes, and some of them are like 5 years apart. Okay,
Okay,
so
I guess the Star Wars franchise.
maybe, yeah, I
You
guess you could
know,
say that, because if you're especially counting sequels and whatnot. But I mean, Rocky.
Rocky, yeah, still, which is still going.
But yeah, I don't think I'm trying. I think the Fast and the Furious came out in 2001, so it
Um,
has more movies, but not
not as long.
as long, and definitely not quality.
Yeah, no.
Um,
Um, yeah, I can't.
Unless you're talking about something like the DC universe or even the MCU, that's not that old either.
No, MCU is barely 15 years old, maybe going to 20 soon.
So yeah,
And DC, again, that depends on how you're counting, because all their various Superman and Batman movies are all different continuities, and
that's true.
so it's not like one continuous,
Right.
you know, I don't want story or cast or whatever.
Right. And even like the Night of the Living Dead, they're all similar, but they're not all tied together either. You have different kinds of zombies and different reasons for zombies, and like there's not really a through line.
And that's true. That's true of a lot of these horror films. Friday the 13th.
Yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street,
See,
Child's Play,
Child's Play
or
and
the
Halloween.
slash Chucky series may be one kind of in that same vein. That I think Chucky, the first Child's Play was late '80s, I think,
Right.
and they're still doing TV shows and everything linked to him, still going in the same continuity.
Well, and
So
Halloween, the first Halloween was 1978.
yeah,
But
that one is so confusing because it's had so many
it's had the requels and the, yeah,
yeah, because they did the original Halloween series, then they did Halloween Water,
Halloween Water.
Halloween H2O,
Oh.
you know, and then they did a sequel to that one, and then they went and did another group of Halloween movies bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back, saying no, those didn't happen. So I mean, that's so hard to count some of these.
Right. And that's the is Halloween's the ones is
Uh,
that the one that Rob Zombie did?
yeah, yeah, he did a little series of them too.
Right. Which were, I would say, arguably the best of the franchise. Rob Zombie, as long as you can stomach some of the gore,
Mm.
then he's a pretty good, like a pretty good horror director.
That's what I. You know, the cool thing about Rob Zombie is I saw a thing on him once is that, and kind of like me, he's a collector.
Yeah.
So he not only collect like the videotapes of his favorite movies, he had the DVDs, the laser discs. Brother was like physical media master, and
Yeah.
I have mad respect for that.
Yeah, and I mean I appreciate too that he's one of those that it's kind of like the Adam Sandler thing where he's loyal to the people who are loyal to him,
Yeah,
and like he keeps re-putting them in movies and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, so I guess for the most part, a lot of these long running franchises really are horror movies,
yeah, no, or at least have the most sequels.
right? Or the retellings or the reimaginings.
Well, but that makes sense because I mean, going all the way back to the early days, the days of the drive-in, horror movies were like the cheapest to produce. You could get a
Yeah,
very quick turnaround on them. I mean, this one, Scream 6, is coming out a year after.
that's true. That was really quick.
Like they did I mean, those Saw movies. They were doing a new Saw movie every Halloween there for a
Oh my
couple
gosh,
years.
those got twisted.
You
I mean, they
know?
started out twisted
Yeah.
and then they got even more twisted.
So horror movies have always been in that realm of quick turnaround, usually fairly cheap to produce, and therefore it doesn't take a whole lot to earn your money back.
But plus, you really do get to, like, even if you can't have good production value, then you can really lean into the cheesy horror
Mm,
movie
yeah.
aspect. You can, like, what is, it's not Alpacalypse. What is the name of that movie?
Lamageddon.
Lamageddon, which is our middle kid's favorite movie. And it is, I mean, it must not have cost more than $5,000 to make this movie,
I think the highest thing in the budget for that movie was the weed.
right?
Because like I have the feeling Where's My Pot was heard a lot on the filming of
Renting the
that
hot
film.
tub might have taken a lot.
I mean, this
Or building the robotic llama.
I don't wanna poo-poo on anybody's film that they clearly had fun making, but I don't really consider Llamageddon a motion picture in the same way as I would. I mean, it's a motion picture in the technical sense. There are pictures and they are in fact moving. You know?
Uh,
That's one of those movies that
but what I'm saying is, like, even like with a horror movie, even if you can't, if you don't have the talent, if you don't have the money, you can still put out a product.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of why they have so many sequels and why you know
There are so many of them, so I can, and I good, like, I love a good horror movie. This is kind of one of our big areas here that we don't necessarily agree on. You're not really a horror guy,
I'm not, and it's not that I don't like a good scare.
right?
I think everybody on some level likes to be scared. Honestly, I'll tell you the truth. The thing I have the hardest time with is gore.
Right,
I don't like seeing people in pain.
right.
I don't like seeing people, get butchered. Things like those Saw and Hostel movies. Like
Yeah,
I couldn't do it.
yeah, those ones are pretty bad.
So so much that's kind of another problem that I think when you have the fast turnaround on a lot of these, they kind of up the gore factor
Right,
to masks, the fact that the script had to be typed up over a weekend
right.
sometimes. So I think that's
Well, we'll have to go more into that with our next review,
yes. Oh my god,
because that will definitely come up
we're gonna have to talk
in our
about the
next
gore.
review. But I do think that I think that horror movies do and horror movie franchises, they really do lend a lot to the artistic world as a
Oh, I
whole
think so.
because they're a great jumping off point for people.
Yeah.
You know, like because I mean, when you're killing 50 girls in a movie, you're gonna need a lot of girls. So
Yep.
that's a great way.
Well, I mean, you look no further than the fact that one of the first scream queens, Jamie Lee Curtis, just won an Oscar.
Exactly.
So I mean,
Well, and there's so many of them, and that's had started out in horror movies
mhm,
and then kind of bounced up from
yeah.
there.
Well, fun quiz. Um, Former biggest star in the world, Jennifer Aniston. You know what her first movie was?
It was a sequel to Leprechaun.
It was not. It was Leprechaun.
Are you sure it wasn't?
I am 100% positive.
I
She's
thought
looking
it
it
was
up right
Leprechaun
now.
too.
She is looking it up right now. She doesn't trust me, but I know my Warwick Davis movies.
I really thought it was
It is not.
Leprechaun too.
It is not. It was Leprechaun.
Oh goodness. Okay, I'm
So,
looking it up.
she's looking it up. And
Hold on, it's taking a second.
why do you go to the most inconvenient website to look at this? Like you could have looked up IMDb.
I just look
and
up
it would've-
everything on Wikipedia.
Like you could look.
Okay, you're right. It was Leprechaun.
Oh!
So yes,
I don't get to hear her say "I'm right" that often.
No, so he has to relish it.
Damn right, damn Skippy, I do.
Yes,
Because
you were right. You were right.
Thank
okay.
you.
All right. So we should get into the actual
all right,
review.
let's talk about
so
it.
come back after the break, and we will be talking about Scream 6. You know, I really feel like when you get down to 6, you need a subtitle.
Yeah.
You know, like Scream 6, we can't stop screaming. The screams go on.
That's a conversation that maybe we should have had because I have real thoughts on that in terms of numbering of sequels.
Oh my gosh.
I am a big proponent of I think every sequel should have a subtitle. And but I don't know, with horror movies, yeah, there's kind of that tradition of
Yep.
Okay, before we get into this, I feel like I need to say this. So we are going to try very hard not to drop spoilers because especially with the Scream franchise, of course the biggest draw of them is who is the killer.
Right.
That was one of the things that really won me over at the first Scream, is that it wasn't just a slasher picture, it was a mystery.
Right.
And
they are pretty solid about kind of having a twist.
Yeah, so we're gonna do our best, but I'm not gonna promise you anything.
Right, we're kind of the all spoilers podcast.
Yeah, so I'm telling you this now. If you haven't seen it, go watch the movie first, and then come back and listen to us. All right. If you don't care about the spoilers, that's fine and dandy.
Right.
But I'm warning you now. So once again, don't flood our inbox with all of you listening out there.
Okay, so let's talk cast.
All right.
So we've got the same cast core that we ended Scream 5 with.
Yeah, or Scream 2022. That's what I hate about these reboots.
Right, the names are
it makes it difficult to.
Right. So we've got Melissa Barrera as our main character, and her sister played by Jenna Ortega. And then we have the twins.
Yeah.
From the first episode the requel.
Yeah, from
Scream 5.
The Randy twins, basically.
Played by Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding, who I didn't realize was Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son.
I did not either. And so far, his career is going better than his dad's. I mean, I know a lot of people, you said it when we were watching, like, well, he's got an Oscar, and he did what since?
Snow dogs. Anyways, so we also have a lot of legacy
We have two legacy characters. Courtney Cox is back as Gale
Whalers,
again, and then
Hayden Panettiere.
who Hayden Panettiere as Kirby Reed, who apparently was from Scream 4.
Right, we had to look it up because I haven't seen Scream 4 and you didn't remember.
Yeah, like she shows up and it's this big dramatic thing. I'm like, Kirby! And I'm like, who the fuck is Kirby? And it's gotta be really hard. I realize this, going, well, that's the only legacy character they give. It's gotta be really hard to bring legacy characters back for this franchise. They're all fucking dead.
I know, they killed Dewey in the last one, right?
Yeah, so it's really hard to get some legacy characters back for these movies.
Yeah. So, and then we have a lot of minor cast. There's Jack Champion. There's Dermot Mulroney,
Yep.
who like always just kind of like he's one of those guys who it's a Dean Cain situation where you're just watching something and you're like, it's Dermot Mulroney is here. Like, okay. Devin Nakota and Tony Revolori as different students. Liana Labierto. I pronounced that one wrong. So sorry about that, Liana. And then also, oh gosh, Josh Segarra, who's one of my favorite guys that I see pop up in things. He's, in She-Hulk, but like I first started watching Josh Segarra back when my kids were little, and he was on the reboot of The Electric Company. So I just love when he pops up into stuff. So yeah, so we have a pretty good cast. They're set in New York City this time. And pretty early on, the killing starts.
Well, I mean, again, that's par for the course.
One of the things I can remember being such a big deal in '96 is that they got Drew Barrymore to play this part, and she was in commercials and whatnot.
She was on the poster. She's front and center on the poster.
And she's dead in the first 10 minutes.
But that was one of the things that the Scream franchise turned on its head. Is here's
Right.
the most notable person in the film and dead.
Right.
Like right out of the gate. And that became that was a statement of intention that this was not going to be your average horror movie. So yeah, so we're following. I don't think we need to go into the plot too much because it's a Scream movie. I mean,
yes, there are teenagers, and people want to kill the teenagers.
Yeah, so but for what it's worth, our two main characters from the last film have moved to New York. They're going to college. Ghostface comes back, and yeah, it's the whole thing. Who's the killer?
Well, it kind of throws us for a loop at the beginning because there is a killing within the first couple of minutes, but then that killer gets killed.
Yeah, I think we can reveal that. So it's Tony. What's his name? Flash from the new Spider-Man movies.
Oh, okay.
He reveals, like, when we were kind of shocked, like they make the first killing, he reveals himself like, and then like a few minutes later, he's killed. So once again, kind of taking you on I don't feel like that's a spoiler. That happened in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that's ruining your time with the picture.
So like at the very beginning, because you said like, holy crap, why'd they reveal who the killer is this early? And then dead. So it's kind of throws you for a loop from the beginning, and it has this aspect of all the previous killers' DNA showing up at the crime scenes.
Yeah.
Which, of course, all of the previous killers have been killed.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's not them, unless we're going into the supernatural realm with this, which
they haven't done yet.
Scream hasn't done.
But at the core, and I think, while there's not a lot we can talk about in terms of plot, because it's a fucking Scream movie.
Right.
But I think what we need to talk about is kind of the two major things that make a Scream movie work. Number one, actually there are a lot of things, but number one, your core your core cast,
Right.
you know, your survivor girls. Now, of course, it was Sydney in the original series,
Right.
and in last year's Scream, they literally passed the torch, and probably one of the best torch passings, over to Melissa Benoist and Jenna Ortega. And of course, Melissa Benoist's character of Sam is the illegitimate daughter of Billy Loomis, the first killer.
Right.
And I think, again, I really like these two in these movies and in this new role as kind of our new Sydneys.
Right.
You know, and especially if there's said to be a through line for this new series of Scream movies, it's Sam, Melissa Benoist's character. Is she gonna turn to the dark side? Is she gonna give in and become like her father? Is that, you know,
it's the nature versus nurture argument?
Yeah.
Like, is it inborn in her? Can she fight it off? Which is interesting because it also gives us a chance to see Skeet Ulrich in the movies as well. But the things I like about them putting Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega as the main characters is, first of all, two Hispanic leads, two Hispanic female leads. Way to go. You know, Jenna Ortega is kind of queen of the moment.
Yeah, she's big right now.
But also, when you have two leads like that, you really do get to play off of each other, and one be more frantic and one trying to like ignore the situation and try, you really do get to see both sides of the coin of people who are being stalked, and the different ways they interact.
And Neve Campbell really didn't have that to play off of, because again, all of her supporting cast,
friends kept getting killed.
She had Dewey and Gail,
right?
Which are not contemporaries,
right?
And it's so I think having, I like the dual lead.
Yeah, I do too.
I like, and like you said, they play off each other. They feel like sisters.
They do.
And I think one of the things I want to say, and I hope Jenna Ortega doesn't kind of go the Jennifer Lawrence route, where she becomes kind of so big that the film franchise that made her feels like a burden. I'm talking about the X-Men movies, not the Hunger Games.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say
films. No, I was talking about the X-Men films. Of course, these movies are a million times better than those X-Men movies. So
True.
but that kind of leads me to one of the other things about this is you can tell the cast, the filmmakers, everybody, they're having fun.
Right.
This is a fun movie to watch. It's a fun movie to make it look like. It looked like everybody was digging it.
And their core cast has a lot of chemistry.
Yeah.
Like the core four from the last movie. The last movie from Scream 5. The core four from that, they really interact well together, and I think they did a really good job with the people they brought in.
Yeah.
As their extras.
Yeah.
as baits and fodder.
Yeah, as they state it, as either more suspects or cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And I think they so again, looking at what are the ingredients to a good Scream movie. Okay, so the cast, good lead actors.
Right.
We care about them. It works. Second thing, of course, to me is the mystery.
Right.
And does the mystery work, and does it have a satisfying payoff?
I think that one thing that the Scream movies really have cemented is, like, in these movies, you can't doubt anybody as the killer.
Yeah.
It could be anybody. And I think, even the Josh Segarra character does say that at one point, like, don't trust anyone, not even me. Like, it's really, it's kind of been so all over the place with the different characters that they've had be the killers in the past that, yeah, it could be any of them.
Yeah, and I think, but again, I think what makes a good Scream movie is not only is it a good mystery, but does it make sense at the end?
Yes.
When it's revealed, because I have to say that like looking at Scream 3 as an example.
Okay.
The reveal that it was the director because he was Sidney's illegitimate brother, and all that. Spoilers for Scream 3. Sorry. Anyway, I have to say that one felt tacked on a bit.
Right.
It didn't feel organic. So does the revelation make sense in the world and make sense for the story? And I think in this case, yes.
So, and having not seen all of the prequels for this, not having seen all the movies leading up to it, it still made sense even without that.
Yeah. The only thing is that, and again, I'm gonna do my best to not to spoil it, but there's something I'm gonna bring up here at the end. There were a couple of ways that the killer got around certain things, and I'm like, I want to see a little bit more on how you pulled that off. Just telling us, oh, we did this and we switched that, and and that's how we did it. It's like, I don't believe you could do that in the time you had. But
Well, I think one of the things is like when you're in the moment of watching that, everything is happening so frantically that you go along with it and you believe it. So, plenty of gore in this one.
But I don't think it's as bad. That's one of the things I liked about the Scream movies. And again, even for someone who doesn't like horror and doesn't like gore, they're gory enough, but they're not too bad.
Right.
We watched it with both our middle and our youngest, and the youngest is not a gore fan.
Yeah, she had to cover her eyes a couple times.
But only a few, and she was like, she even said like one of the times she didn't like it is when one of the girls gets stabbed and the knife actually goes up and the skin moves. She didn't like that, and I got to agree with her. But
right. Well, that's honestly, I don't mind gore for the most part. I like some Quentin Tarantino. But there is something about stabbing that is so much worse.
Yeah.
And I think the sound effects that they do with the stabbing just make it so like, oh, you can just feel it, the knife going into you. There's something about stabbing that is so much worse than like shooting or even like axe murdering. The stabbing with a big old knife is like, oh. And there is a part where the killer is chasing around a character and they get stabbed several times and they're kind of keeping going. And it's like, it was
hard to watch.
Yeah. Like my teeth were on edge. And I mean, not bad. Like obviously it was hard to watch in the way that it was supposed to be hard to watch.
Yeah. So other things that make a successful Scream movie, the kills and the scares, like,
yes.
What'd you think of that?
So lots of good anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, they're trying to get from one apartment to the next, and that was very
by scaling a ladder between two apartments,
right? And that was very anxiety inducing.
Mm-hmm. The bit in the subway, I think.
Oh my gosh, yes, the subway part.
It made a lot of good use of the new environment.
It did, because we're a small town pretty much before, right?
Yeah, and like they've changed, like most of the Screams move around in environment. You had the small town, and then you had the college town,
right?
And then you had Hollywood, and then they were. I think 4 went back to the small town. I think again, I don't remember. And then 5 was at the small town, and now we're back to a big city. So
it must have been because they said Kirby and Sam were at the same school.
Yeah,
that's how they knew each other.
Yeah, so
they must have gone back to the same town. But sorry, my cat's being super cute right now. But yeah, being in the big city, like this idea that you're in a crowd of people and you still you're not safe. Like you can't get away, and being separated from your friends, and it's really, there are some moments when you were at the edge of your seat. Yeah, definitely. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely think, like I said, they made the most out of the environment, and they had a lot of fun with the environment. I remember back in the day when Jason took Manhattan, and that was the big selling point of whichever Friday the 13th that was, and it really didn't matter. Really, the fact that it was in New York played very little into it. It was still a generic Friday the 13th movie.
The Friday the 13th movie, it's like sidetrack for a second. It pissed me off because the best part of the first Friday the 13th was that his mom was wreaking vengeance in his name. And then to bring Jason back as this like immortal supervillain, just like it's just ruined the concept for me. I'm sorry. Okay, anyways,
That's all right.
Back to Scream.
But yeah, I think they, like I said, you're so close to so many people, and yet you're so distant from them.
Right.
The idea of traveling in a confined space with a lot of people wearing the mask of the killer
because
that's after
Halloween,
you, and you don't know which one's which. Is that person looking at you just happening to look at you, or are they? So I think they really did a good job kind of ratcheting up the tension on this one, and again keeping it fresh.
Well, and I just remember too, one of the things that they did is a very current type of thing people have to deal with, is that Sam, the main character, was lauded as a hero at the end of the last movie, but at the beginning of this movie, there are people claiming that she was a villain, she masterminded the whole thing, and she was a murderer, and like getting a lot of hate online. And I think that's something that very real, like really happens currently at this time.
Well, and that brings us, that's a nice segue. See how well planned out we are? That's a nice segue into the next thing that makes a successful Scream movie, and that is the commentary.
Right.
The commentary on the movies that they're based on. Like, say, they make a lot of references to, the rules of franchises and what goes on there.
Obsession.
Yeah.
Collection, like where does the line from healthy collection and obsession cross over into dangerous? Which is something like we've talked about with previous things we've watched, is like, especially as regards to stalking and things like that with having 3 daughters. Like what's the line between, oh, this guy is obsessed with me and it's a good thing, and oh, this guy is obsessed with me and I need to keep pepper spray in my car. So
that's, and again, I think they did all that in really clever ways, and I remember they did that in really clever ways in the last one too, talking about reboots and why are things so popular, and the whole concept of toxic fanhood.
Right.
And when does something, like you said, cross the line from an inspiration, something that gives you meaning, that inspires you to go out and create something of your own, into an obsession that you are a gatekeeper of.
Right.
And where's that line? And I think this film does that, and I think does it way more subtly than past. And I think that's something else that earlier Scream sequels like 2 and 3 had a little bit of a harder time with, because I don't think they had as much to say about sequels or trilogies or things of that ilk, or they were way more obvious about it.
Right.
Whereas I think this one is a little bit more subtle in its messaging.
Well, one of the writers, the predominant writer for this and the last movie, is Guy Busick, who also wrote that movie Ready or Not, which was another one of the horror movies that you love.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Because I liked Ready or Not,
and that has its own kind of commentary as well.
Yeah,
and I think I can't go through a horror movie review without bringing up Jordan Peele.
So, you can't go through a review without bringing up Jordan Peele. You just want Jordan Peele to make every movie,
basically. But one of the things that he really brought attention to, and I'm not saying he was the first person to do it, but one of the things he brought attention to was social commentary, horror as social commentary. And I think that is something that good writers have paid attention to in the last few years. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Before we get to our final grade, I have the question of where do you go with this franchise from here? So we'll be right back.
Okay, so we're in New York.
Yeah.
We've been stalked and slashed and shot and dumped and chased and thrown out of things. Where does it go?
Yeah, so that's my question, and I've been asking that question with a lot of films lately, especially these longer running. Yeah, I remember we talked about this in terms of Creed.
Creed.
You
Mhm.
know, like with each Creed film, I said that was good, but I don't think you need to make a sequel. And then
Right.
they make a sequel and it's good, and then I'm like, well, that was good, but you don't have to make a sequel. Then they make a sequel and it's good, you know. So it's this perpetual thing. And we talked about this with the last Creed movie is where do you go if you make a Creed 4?
Right.
You know, and with horror movies, I think this is even more of an important question because as we talked about in the intro, these things have a very fast turnaround.
Mhm.
And what tends to be the plague of a lot of horror movie franchises, and Scream was no exception, is that at a certain point, there's no more story to tell, but they're continuing to pump these movies out because they're cheap to make and they bring in a profit.
Fast and the
Fast
Furious.
and the Furious, you know, but you know, but I mean, you look at Saw, you look at Paranormal Activity. Like
Right.
how many of these things are there now?
Oh gosh, I enjoyed the first Paranormal Activity, but I yeeted out of that series pretty
You know,
quickly.
and that's kind of this. I would almost guarantee there will probably be a Scream 7.
I would say so. And here's the thing: is like, have they expanded the world enough to do that? Like, okay, I love Silence of the Lambs, one of my top 5 favorite movies of all times, and Hannibal sucked. So, like, just because something is good doesn't mean the next iteration is going to be any better. But that's also because the world of Hannibal Lecter was not big enough to take on a whole another movie. Um, the series was okay, but like the way they did the movie, it wasn't big enough. So, have they expanded the Scream universe enough that it can sustain another movie?
Well, I mean, and again, that's kind of the problem is I don't think a lot of the big wigs at a movie theater or a movie studio are going to ask that question. They're going to say, "This made money, get me another one." It's the Planet of the Apes issue that they made the original Planet of the Apes. They made a one-shot movie. They said everything they need to say, and then Fox said, "This made us a ton of money. Make us a sequel." And they
Right.
said, "We don't. There's nothing more to do." And then make us. So they made a sequel. It did decent business, and they said, "Great, make another one." Say, "We blew up the world at the end of the last one. How are we?" You know. So, and I think that's where a lot of these horror movies start to.
They really should have just came in with like the monkeys doing a full on the monkeys, like the band from the 70s. Like, oh,
um,
yes, the world came back together and we decided to join a band.
but so that was something I was thinking as this one was wrapping up, and it is, and this is we live in the era of franchises.
Okay.
And so the question that was just rattling around in my head is what do you do next? How do you go further here?
I think the next logical step to me, and this is just me coming from a true crime world, the next logical step is that Sam goes into law enforcement and kind of, you know, gets mentored by Kirby, and they happen upon another Ghostface killer, and not necessarily in that area, not necessarily chasing after Sam, but a copycat in another place.
So
Like,
someone going after another girl,
right.
and now Sam is in
FBI
the
or
the
yeah.
mentor role, kind of.
Well, Kirby's in the mentor, like she's, and Sam is
Okay.
working around with her. Because I do want to see Hayden Panettiere doing some more stuff. She's had a rough few years,
Yeah.
dealt with mental illness. Like, let's give her a break and throw some more Scream movies her way.
Okay.
What do
Okay.
you think? It's
I have two ideas.
okay.
And neither one of them is incredibly fleshed out. They're just kind of things I think the thing that they've been leaning towards. We talked about this earlier. Is Sam
Right.
mentally stable?
Right.
Is she ever going to break and become Ghostface?
Okay.
And I think that one option you can go with is actually do it and have her be the killer. Maybe she's going after people she thinks are going to harm other people, or she, like I said, she's a cop, but she can't stop killers or rapists. So she goes
tying it in with like a Dexter type of situation.
Yeah, like maybe that's a way they can go. The other way, and this was kind of what I was thinking, inspired by the opening of this one, is wouldn't it be interesting to see one of these movies from the killer's point of view, wherein we, the audience, know who the killer is from the very beginning. And we actually watch, like I said, in all these Scream movies, one of the things that the Scream movie did, the first one did, that was revolutionary, is had two killers.
Right.
And then the question is, well, which one was Skeet Ulrich and which time was it Matthew Lillard?
Right.
So wouldn't it be kind of interesting to see one of these movies done from that perspective and see how they tag team out, or how they, get from one place, or how they switch a body around with nobody noticing?
Maybe.
Kind of taking it a Columbo route.
I don't know though. That's almost a little like handbook for a serial killer. I don't know. Like, there's just something. One of the, like you said before, one of the magic things about the Scream movies is not knowing who it is until the end. Until the big reveal. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it would work.
I do think that the idea of Sam being the killer could tie into, like you said, her being in the FBI.
Yeah.
And like becoming a profiler or something, and then
Well, I just think like maybe what they could do. I remember this was a rumor way back in the day when Cloverfield came out, and back after that movie came out, the talk of the sequel, before they kind of just attached the Cloverfield, named all these unrelated projects, was that they were going to basically do the exact same movie, but this time it was going to be from the military's point of view.
Oh.
So you were going to see basically the same series of events, but from a different perspective.
Right.
And see things you didn't see before.
Right.
So maybe that would be an interesting thing to do for a Scream 7 and Scream 8, film them simultaneously kind of thing. Have the first one be from our usual victim's point of view, and then the next one be same movie, but this time from the killer's point of view.
Well, if you do, and Sam is the killer, then it would be from her point of view the whole time.
Yeah, it's true.
So I don't know.
So I don't know. I the reason I bring this up is because I've really enjoyed these last two Scream movies. Really enjoyed them.
And you don't want them to go off the rails.
And I don't want them to go off the rails. I'd almost rather, and I know they're not going to, but I'd almost rather they say, okay, we did a good job. We brought the series back. Cut your losses. But they're not going to do that. They brought the series back. So what's the point of bringing the series back if it can't bring you in more money every year? So they're gonna do another one. I'm almost 100% positive.
Right.
And I just want to keep, if they're going to, I want to keep the quality. I want to do things that the series hasn't done before, and yet still keep it in the Scream universe. So that's just what I'm wondering. Those are just some thoughts I had.
All right. Well, now here's the thought that you can have.
All
What
right.
do you think?
All
How
right.
did this one do?
Final grade. Final grade. I dug this. I truly dug this. I dug the last one. It was on my top 10 movies of the year last year, and this one's right up there. I'm giving it a solid A.
Okay.
I'm giving it's a good movie. It's exciting. It's not as grounded in reality as, say, the first one. It's this one definitely is a franchise movie where the needs of the franchise are a little bit more important than the needs of the story. We talked about the collection.
Right.
It's like, how the hell did you get like all of this? The
Right.
TV that killed Matthew Lillard. Like, it's like you're telling, like, okay, yeah, they had that. You're telling me they haven't junked that yet?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. But anyway, but on the whole, I enjoyed it. I thought the twist was interesting enough. 50% predictable, 50% shocking, and I liked it. So I give this one a solid A.
Well, I'm a little tougher on horror movies than you actually, so I'm going B plus.
Oh,
I felt like they strained a little bit when it came to the killer. And then at the end, this is the problem that the franchise movies run into, is that they have to add a jump scare killer actually didn't get killed thing onto the end of each one. So by the time like you're getting so many, like you just never believe that the killer's actually dead because like he comes back to life so many times. They come back to life so many times. I'll say they.
It comes back so
yes. So so I feel like they were straining a little on that. But overall, pretty good. I probably will watch it again. Our middle kid is really into horror movies, so like we'll probably be watching this again this year.
I mean, like I said, and yeah, and honestly, let us know if you'd be interested in a Scream retrospective or having us watch and talk about each movie, maybe as a Halloween special kind of thing. Let us know. We would very much like to hear. Okay. So that was Scream 6, and when we return, we're going to talk about a movie that apparently was supposed to be part of a franchise and then totally went off the rails and
in a great way.
So join us next time, and we will talk about Renfield. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, my love, for not only the wonderful companionship watching movies, but wonderful conversation and talking about the movies.
And I made you a charcuterie board.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. When we watch the movies, we haven't been eating charcuterie this whole time. So. But thank you all for listening, and as always, drive safe, and we'll see you at the movies.